Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday. I have had to re-record this video about 4 times now because every time I record it and I'm about to upload it, I get a new piece of information. I appreciate the people who are sending me follow-up information on this story, and so I'm doing my best to make the information as current as I possibly can with the pre-record structure I use because YouTube upload is super faulty. It fails a lot for me. So this information is current as of 5:30 p.m. Eastern yesterday. Remember Twitch tonight, by the way. More Last of Us, my gameplay. But if you like this sort of reporting, I can never quite quit games reporting instead of games opinion. But help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. I think it's important to have all the facts about this Laura Bailey harassment story and in general the stuff that's going on surrounding Last of Us 2. And part of the reason I think it's important and the reason I'm doing this is because a lot of people, when they covered the Laura Bailey harassment, they made some assumptions about the identity of the people doing the harassment, as I got into in yesterday's video to an extent. It turns out that at least one of the people who sent Laura Bailey a harassing message is a huge fan of The Last of Us 2. And I think that warrants talking about. So we're going to get into it. Before I share this, I want everybody to know I am not compromising anyone's online privacy. The account that you're going to see has since been deleted, and the person has taken up a new account whose tweets are protected, and I'm not going to be sharing that one. It's the importance here is sort of the character, the reasons given for why the person responded the way that they did. Because it's very important in understanding what's going on here, okay? So here's the original tweet, okay? The one we're talking about here is one of the ones that clearly is a public tweet, not these that I still think look like Facebook or DMs or something like that, but this one up here. The thing that made it easy for people to search for was the double K. Here, read into that what you will. I think it was just somebody trying to be extra angry typing, right? But that makes it easy to search. Well, somebody sent me this. You see, it's the original tweet, emojis and all, displayed differently on Laura Bailey's screen than here, but the triple K, the 2 emojis, the capitalization, it's identical. This is the same tweet, okay? So this was screen capped as part of an apology. It looks like this is Polish here. So maybe somebody from Poland captured this. I don't know. It's a screen grab. But I just want to say and send my most sincere apologies to Laura Bailey VO. I am really a fan of this game, but when it happened at the beginning of the game, I could not control myself. My psychological state became difficult. I could not breathe, but when I played with Abby. Obviously, typey, still no good. Below it says, I realize that I was wrong and this game has no hero in it, but this game remains one of The Last of Us Part 2 greatest games I played in my life. I am very sorry, Laura Bailey VO. I hope you forgive me. Now, Laura Bailey was the bigger person. She tweeted, I accept your apology, but this person still got like dogpiled pretty freaking hard. Maybe that's why they deleted their account. And got a new one. But you see, the responses they went through. They made this collage. Collages are like the new citations, I guess. But you see them saying, not me. How many missed this part in your playthrough? Not me. I love discovering, not like these dumbs. How played a whole game in 5 hours. Obviously, English is not this person's strength. You see this person also told off Neil Druckmann. So they weren't targeting a woman. They just went crazy on everybody. And then you see here, fan love, a meme, someone hates story of Last of Us Part 2. Me, you wouldn't get it. Kind of interesting to use the Joker in this one. But fighting that Ellie is better than Abby over here. Oh, you can't see that here. It's blown up. But one person said down here, I'm covering it up with my face, but I just finished the game. I truly believe people don't get the meaning of this story. It's so powerful. Best game ever played. Somebody, the person who told off Laura Bailey says, indeed. So this is somebody who's, if not a fan, really impersonating a fan quite well. I think we can safely say that this is a fan. Because they bothered to apologize and then they deleted the account instead of reveling in the attention, right? Which complicates the narrative put up by Dr. Uckman and friends that the problem was gamers. You'll recall yesterday that Neil Gaiman responded. Here it is. So you don't think I'm paraphrasing. As the people that propagate this kind of hate would say, how stunning and brave. Well, now it turns out that he's calling fans of his game propagators of hate. Instead of somebody who just had a breakdown and behaved badly, they are propagators of hate, okay? I hope these gamers get the mental health they so clearly need. Unfortunately, this is now the cost of making popular entertainment that challenges conventions. And now that final statement has a different meaning now, doesn't it? If he meant the cost of creating popular entertainment that challenges conventions mean you trigger your fans, well, he's accurate there. I don't think that's what he meant, though. I think he was assuming that anybody who would send Laura Bailey a nastygram like that hated what they were doing. Now, I was partially wrong. I didn't rule out somebody just being angry and sending it, but I said it was mostly trolls. I still maintain it's mostly trolls based on a lot of the activity I've been seeing. A lot of the accounts that have been coming at me over the weekend have a particular tweet about gold-plated chicken wings for the wealthy in Yemen. I see that over and over and over again. So they're obviously seeding new troll accounts. They're also 6 months old or less. And, you know, the padding, there's also a lot of overlap of them targeting this and them targeting Black Lives Matter, which I find interesting, and that's consistent with the operations that happen online that don't try to change people's minds. They just attempt to polarize opinion and sow dissent and capitalize on pre-existing divisions in society. And obviously the collection of lolcows that have become this fight over The Last of Us 2, they have determined that this is a soft target. This is something they can get some action on. This is a way to drive a wedge. And the reason I'm making this follow-up is precisely because at least one of these messages was sent by an obsessed fan, a stan, if you will. That reframes the whole thing. Like, as I've said in previous videos, when you deliberately do something shocking, some people will respond more strongly than others. That is true of everything. We talked about, I talked about Breaking Bad in a previous video, but Game of Thrones Season 8, all that stuff. And as I said, we sort of know now that when some people get worked up that way, fans of the show will respond in over the top ridiculous ways. So this isn't a gamer here, as far as we can tell. This is somebody who is just a huge fan of the Last of Us franchise. And the reason I make a distinction here is because The Last of Us being very narrative driven attracts a lot of people who don't play that many like hardcore games. And I asked the person who sent this to me, because I couldn't view the account, it's been deleted, for more details on the account. They said it seems like this is actually a fan. However, it appears that their first language is Arabic. So that's another piece that kind of, depending on how you look at that piece of information, one could say it could still be, an op. Another could say, well, it's just somebody who, obviously this game has deep meaning for this person, and if they're an immigrant or something like that, who may have in part moved to another country because of the treatment of LGBTQ plus people in Arab countries, maybe they're on fragile emotional footing. But that's something we really need to talk about. And whether Naughty Dog showed sufficient sensitivity for people who, because of real world things, may not be on the firmest psychological footing. Now, for people who are new to this channel, I know a lot of you are new. I've been quite open about my own getting diagnosed with PTSD, going through successful treatment. You don't call it cured, but you come out of symptomatic. You are handling its bad memories instead of like nightmares and avoidance and all that stuff. So I am more sympathetic than most. I understand better than most that trauma, especially trauma plus social media, stuff does happen. And I am sympathetic for people who get into trouble with tweets they put out when they were triggered. I have been guilty of that in the past. I don't do it anymore. I know when I'm pissed off, stay off Twitter. That's why it's really funny that when people get on me, oh, you're really mad. No, when I'm mad, the phone goes down and I stay away from the computer. I have learned my lesson. But this person clearly had a very strong emotional reaction to the round of golf, as I've taken to calling it. That is what that scene was designed to do. Now, on the one hand, every review that was written about the game mentioned the brutal violence. Many of the more high-profile reviews mentioned the disturbing, traumatizing quality of some of the violence in the game. And so there was an element of you were warned here. But somebody who's a huge fan of the first game, which was also quite violent, and there was death, is forgiven for not predicting how much darker the sequel would be. Now, sequels who are going for awards bait tend to be darker because everything wants to be The Empire Strikes Back now. But not everybody knows this. Not everybody knows those conventions. They don't know those conventions. I'll just stick there. And so I'm not going to blame this person for, getting into media that they love, and having a very strong reaction to it. They didn't handle it in the best way, clearly. Newsflash, when someone's triggered, they don't. I would be a complete hypocrite for chiding someone for their behavior. They flat out said that they started having trouble breathing. Now, is that a normal reaction to media? No, it's not. But we have to keep in mind that The Last of Us 2 appeals very strongly to members of the LGBTQ plus community. There is a lot of trauma still in that community. Even though there have been massive strides in gay rights, there are still parts of North America that rural Canada is still a problem, according to some groups I keep in touch with from the old days. And, obviously certain cultures are not as good with it as others. There are people that are profoundly traumatized. They have a lot of rejection and trauma in their background. This is going to hit them much, much harder than the average person who is not immediately or directly affected, that their experiences aren't somehow, they don't connect to the game as you are validating me. And I think one of the miscalculations that Naughty Dog made here is, and spoilers to come, most of you know this already, but I'm just going to say it to be extra careful. There's a particular place regarding father figures and LGBTQ youth. Basically, because if somebody's really going to have a strong problem, it's more likely to be the dad. And so to have that kind of acceptance of Joel as surrogate father to Ellie, that's wish fulfillment. That's hope for a lot of LGBTQ plus youth. And obviously not across the board. I'm just saying like broad strokes here, right? Why I think that more sensitivity should have been paid to this point. We're not talking about the presumed, audience, right? The white, straight, cisgendered male audience. We're talking about that secondary audience. And this is why you remember way, way back, like the day before the game came out, I posted a video saying my concern here is that this game is actually made by predominantly a white, straight, cisgendered man for white, straight, cisgendered men. And he's using, LGBTQ plus women. Well, Abby's not LGBTQ plus. But, Ellie and other characters, they're using them as meat puppets for a story that is essentially a story by white straight dudes, cisgendered, for white straight cisgendered dudes. And that was my concern about where the game was going to go wrong. This is another piece of evidence that it did go wrong in that way. There's other tells in it. Notably, there's something very off and unnatural about Jesse's reactions in the game, Dina's ex-boyfriend. It's not the way a human being authentically reacts to being dumped. It's the way that male allies are supposed to react when they find out their partner is not straight. The problem complicating this is that before Dina dances with Ellie at the party, she's flirting with another guy. So again, this is where some of my Twitch viewers, please join us again tonight, 6 p.m. Some of my Twitch viewers and I agree with this. There's really biphobic elements, or at the very least, engaging in stereotypes about bisexual women regarding insensitive promiscuity going on in The Last of Us 2. And it's very disappointing. It is not an uncommon thing in LGBTQ plus circles. It is certainly not an inclusive thing. There's a lot of what's called bi-erasure in the LGBTQ plus community, in that some people think that bi women should pick a side, or they resent that, well, you can pass. That's becoming obviously less common in the mainstream, but among those sort of radical, the people J.K. Rowling's hanging out with these days, there's still a lot of it there. And I don't know if the people in question who worked on this game are part of that. I'm not going to speculate, but there's issues with this game in this regard. And I'm going to stop there for now, because that's kind of enough spoilers. But they're not really super important spoilers. Like, who freaking cares? It's sort of implied in the early scenes of the game. But where I'm getting at with this is, it is plausible that an emotionally fragile fan of the game could have gone off that way. There's no reason to doubt that based on the evidence we have now. Then that doesn't explain all of them, right? That's one. But I'd say that was like mid-range. It wasn't, it wasn't the least offensive one. People, fuck you, dumb Abby bitch. That's not a threat. But, it's not as bad as the people that said they were going to hunt Laura Bailey down. Yeah. But at least we know there's at least one person who was lumped in with evil, bad, political, affiliated, and Neil Druckmann was wrong. And that's very important. This should be a very sobering awareness for him if he is just drunk off of smelling his own farts, mixed metaphor, high off smelling his own farts, and not a sociopathic narcissist. Like, anybody with some empathy is going to slow down at this point and go, okay, I was wrong about the people who had bad reactions to this game. And I think this is, to invoke the cliche, something of a teachable moment for people who want to use these sorts of storylines in art. LGBTQ youth are not mascots. They're not objects that people can use to show woke points. They're not puppets to show how woke you are. They are real people, and they have damaged self-esteem and damaged sense of self in ways that, if you haven't gone through it, you really can't comprehend. And messing with things that bring them comfort, the vast majority of them, they might be pissed off at you, but they'll be able to handle it. But there are some that are still in a very fragile place. There are still people who get kicked out of their houses because their parents find out. There are people who are subject to physical violence. There are people who are marginalized and suffer financial hardship. Now, financial hardship's probably unlikely for somebody who bought and played a PS4 game at launch, but we don't know. Even people who aren't impoverished because of either coming out or being outed, there is damage, there is rejection, and a lot of that rejection comes from family and comes from older men. And so I really think that Naughty Dog misjudged what Joel meant to LGBTQ youth, ironically as an ally, as sort of a dad figure who is, originally from Texas and kind of a redneck, but was cool with it. and they kind of made him not cool with it in subtle ways in the game. It's certainly like stupid about it, which was disappointing. It could have been a real signal to, you know, guys who kind of identify that way, modeling of it's cool. Now, granted, most gamers don't have to be told that. Of course, gaming is, despite what you may have heard, one of the most LGBTQ plus accepting spaces, like communities out there. Has been for a very long time. That doesn't mean there aren't issues. It just means we've been really ahead of the curve on this stuff. You know, there have been few spaces I've been to. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival was one of them, but that was because for many, many years, the Winnipeg Comedy Festival was run by a very funny trans woman. So, they were ahead of the curve on that one, but, shout outs to Winnipeg Comedy Festival. You guys are awesome. But, you know, it is undeniable that to an extent, based on the way they've been reacting, Naughty Dog miscalculated on this game. The reaction they were prepared for or that they wanted was certainly not in alignment with the game they made. Because if they wanted to sort of be universally adored and not have people have extremely strong reactions to a lot of the content, that's not even the thing that bothered me the most in that game. I'm left haunted by certain, and they're in gameplay. It's just throwaway violence in the game. I'm like, oh, you'll see me play going like, that's unnecessary. It doesn't even make any sense, you know? But if they didn't want a portion of their player base, legit fans, to get triggered by the content, why did they put in predictably triggering content? This is what I can't understand. Like, if you want to provoke, if you want to be a provocateur, that's cool. There's a place in that for art. But when you provoke, don't complain and demonize the people who were provoked. That was a predictable outcome. And that doesn't mean they should be sending, you know, cast members nasty grams. But we know that they will now. So if you're going to do this, you got to be prepared for it. And you got to prepare your talent, especially talent that plays female antagonists. Any antagonist, never mind. Men have gotten it too. But, you know, anybody who's going to be a heel turn or is going to be a clear antagonist, you have to prepare them that this is part of the landscape now. If you're not prepared to do that, then you shouldn't be doing things that provoke such a strong response. Again, I repeat, I am not saying people shouldn't make provocative art. I have said Death Stranding is amazing, and that is a game with a battle-ready fetus, okay? Like, that's going to provoke some people. I know it did with me. At first, I'm like, nope, screw this, nope. And then I came to really love BB. But you know, that's provocative. A lot of the things they did in that game are provocative. It said a lot about war. It said a lot about family. It said a lot about really, really deep stuff. I mean, Kojima gets under your skin. That's why I have to be in the right mood to play a Hideo Kojima game. But he doesn't complain about the polarized response. Some people are going to get it, some people aren't. If you want to be universally beloved, you have to go and make like Nintendo does. And even Animal Crossing isn't universally beloved. I know some people who think it's boring. I don't know how they think that. It's freaking adorable. But, you know, people have gone on about Tom Nook and the evils of capitalism and all that stuff. Like, freaking spare me. But that, you're like, how did they get that? In this, I can't say that, you know. If they really are allies, they should recognize that they are going to salt some wounds in the stuff they're doing in this game. And some people will be placated by some of the stuff that happens in the second half. A lot of people won't. A lot of people, because it takes too long. The bad feelings, it's like hours and hours and hours before you get to the second part. The bad feelings have been allowed to settle. And so some people are never going to get over that. And when you make a provocative title, if you're going for the something important to say crowd, you have to be prepared that you're going to hurt some people. And you have to be prepared to acknowledge that. And you have to be very humble and very self-aware and very kind to people who you pushed too far, pushed over the edge in some cases. Not that it's your fault, but if you truly are an ally, because I mean, it's media, right? But if you truly are an ally, you need to show sensitivity to that. And I found it very interesting that while this was going on, Hamilton got hammered. And a friend of mine online pointed this out to me, but what a different response, right? For people who don't know, Hamilton is sort of the story of the founding of America-ish, with Black people in most of the main roles. When I saw it in Toronto touring cast, Hamilton's, Eliza Hamilton, I think her name was. She was played by a Chinese lady. The only white person in the whole cast is King George. But there has been some talk, some chatter over the weekend that now that it's been released on Disney Plus and made available to a much wider audience beyond the predominantly white Broadway crowds that can pay like $100 per ticket, it has had some criticism about the depiction of people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who, you know, did horrible things to indigenous people and owned slaves. Not everybody loved it. And Lin-Manuel Miranda responded by saying, you know, to a person, Chubba Beef, Brokey McPoverty, I'm late with the Hamilton criticism stuff, and I'm clearly biased, but I really like this conversation is happening. Hamilton, the play, and the movie were given to us in two different worlds, and our willingness to interrogate things in this way feels like a clear sign of change. And this is she really went freaking hard on this. But Lin-Manuel Miranda says, appreciate you so much. All the criticisms are valid. The sheer tonnage of complexities and failings of these people I couldn't get or wrestled with but cut. I took 6 years and fit as much as I could in a 2.5-hour musical. Did my best. It's all fair game. That's the kind of thing that Naughty Dog has to start doing. Hamilton is a cultural phenomenon. Great. Like this is the dude being a sore winner, right? A non-sore winner. Hamilton launched Lin-Manuel Miranda's career. He got a multi-picture deal with Disney. He was in the Mary Poppins sequel, for God's sakes, right? Like, Hamilton been very, very good to him. He can afford to be humble and take some criticism because it's not going to hurt his bank account. That's how you lead in art. That's how you respond to controversy surrounding your best efforts, knowing you couldn't get it all in. I could do an entire video on what I think of Hamilton and the intricacies and the way they sort of tied in, the way it drew parallels between the founding fathers and, you know, the 80s and 90s kind of Tupac, Biggie gangster rap scene. But this is the wrong channel for that. But that's how you do it. That's the sort of leadership we should be seeing from people like Neil Druckmann. We're waiting, right? This is what we talk about when we say gaming needs to mature. Not the players, the professionals that represent all of us when stuff gets rough. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, because I haven't had my Hamilton yet. I haven't broke out. Thanks for watching.